Hey, what's going on there, guys? Earthmaster here. It is February 10th, 2018, straight up 8 p.m. here on the West Coast. And checking in for the earthquake update video for tonight, Saturday night. It is pretty windy out here in California. Had quite a good north wind out here, drying things out and creating some major fire hazards out here in California once again. With the lack of rain and the strong winds, is some prime conditions here for fires, no doubt, out here in California, and that's not a good thing because I like the rain. Anyway, covering the earthquakes out here, I'll cover a little bit over what I covered earlier, and I was mentioning this the past couple days here, the continuance of a massive amount of deep earthquakes out here along the Pacific Plate. Today, more specifically, within, well, you can see these two deep quakes right here. This ring right here, and also this older ring down near the Fiji Islands region, showing some large-scale movement, and it's building, guys. It's definitely, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's definitely building towards something on the larger side of the earthquake scale. More specifically, like I mentioned, out in this region right here. We're looking at a large increase in pressure along the Western Pacific, or Western Plate, I should say. And that includes from Japan, China, all the way down to Indonesia region as well. But there's just been a cluster. I can take this back a couple days here and show you guys the cluster of quakes and the pressure that's ultimately being applied over here in this region. I mean, just obviously looking at it, it's there. I mean, there's something going on. There's some deep, large-scale movement, and we have not seen a large quake to, to basically make up for all this pressure that's being applied over here. Yeah, we got little ones. There's lots of fours. I mean, there's 100 fours on here. If I go back, over the past week, but it's definitely building up towards something. Meanwhile, the Eastern Pacific is rather quiet. I mean, look at that. It's always that way. California, pretty quiet. Alaska, of course, still has, let's bring it down to the last 24 hours, has their aftershock activity following that huge earthquake there, well, a couple weeks ago now. And, of course, they're going to see some aftershock activity for some time to come. But other than that, the West Coast, down through Mexico, pretty quiet. There is a little bit of activity in southern Mexico. A couple fours there and a 5 over the last 24 hours, but nothing big. Nothing on the large scale as far as earthquake activity goes. And little 4.8 over there in the in this part of the world, or 4.9 I should say, as well as a 5.0. Kind of interesting activity down here. This 5.0, not too deep. It's 10 kilometers. They're putting it down at 5.0 southwest of Africa. USGS doesn't even have a estimate on the mileage there, as far as where it's at. But once again, it's over in that fracture zone over here. This, what is that called? Dingan fracture zone, out in the ocean out there. Well, that's just that 5-pointer, South Atlantic Ocean region. Other than that, taking a look at the globe, guys, it's obvious. I don't need to tell you guys where the majority of the activity is. It's, well, and it's deep. It's along this Pacific Ring of Fire. The whole Pacific Plate over here. And southwestern portion included. And also extending beyond that Pacific Ring of Fire right here. You can see it. You can trace it out. That little crack in the earth there, in the earth's surface beneath the ocean. That's a Pacific Plate there. But also all this pressure that's being applied over here is causing earthquakes. I mean, there's a deep one right over here just to the west of this fracture zone here in this region of the world. Let's see if I can pull one up here. Pull up this 4.1 near the Philippines. Philippine Trench is what they call this fracture zone over here. Of course, you take it out a little bit further and you can see the whole Pacific plate, Pacific Ring of Fire, so to speak, which extends through this area and down through here. So it's definitely, no doubt, included, that earthquake right there, included in the activity that's going on right now. But we're waiting. I mean, it's going to happen, I believe. We're expecting some larger scale movement within this area here pretty soon. I mean, it's just too many. Look at all the clusters. I mean, it's just from north to south, a cluster of earthquakes happening in this specific part of the world. So, yeah, I mean, it's just something's bound to happen. It's it's too obvious not to see that. As far as California activity goes, pretty darn quiet. San Andreas Fault System, a couple small earthquakes along there near Hollister. Southern California, not a lot of activity. Pretty quiet, little 3.0 near Agunga. I guess that's how you pronounce it. I hate pronunciation of weird names because I always pronounce them wrong. But yeah, pretty quiet out there in the California region. Nevada looks pretty quiet as well. I'm going to go over real quick the activity in Yellowstone that someone pointed out that could be, well, earthquake related. Unfortunately, well, I guess I should say it fortunately, this activity up here in the northwest corner of the park is not earthquake related. The reason why I know that is if you take a look at the other seismograph stations here, we'll go over this one here in a minute, but the other local seismograph stations here, like Horse Butte, for example, does not show any signature of that activity that's being picked up to that station to the north here, Hebgen Lake. So this is either interference of some sort or possibly, I looked at it earlier, it runs for a couple hours. The timestamp anyway, it looks as though it could be maybe a geyser up there. I'm not for sure what's up in that region of the park. But like I say, 2 hours, 2.5 hours is a long time to have that type of activity. So I'm thinking of some type of interference, maybe a bulldozer, something up there in the region causing that interference there. But here in Maple Creek, this is activity. This is earthquake activity, a couple spikes. And this is ultimately how earthquake swarms start up in the up in the Yellowstone National Park region. We see these little clusters of small quakes, and then it only increases from there. So we'll have to pay attention, close attention to this region within the next day, probably tomorrow. Definitely see what type of activity occurs there, because that's definitely activity. That's that's earthquake activity, and in the spiky region, I like to call it, just these little spikes of earthquakes. Sometimes ice will cause stuff like that, on the seismograph station readings there, but that's definitely not ice. As this earthquake right here, the larger of those, was picked up on another station a couple miles away. You can see it also showing up right there, and these little smaller ones being picked up as well from the quakes that are occurring near Maple Creek in Yellowstone National Park. So we will definitely watch that. Real-time tremor detection system, pretty quiet over the last 3 hours. You can go back the last 2 days and still see most of the activity confined up to the north near Vancouver Island. A little bit of activity in Medford, Oregon, and a couple sporadic tremors being detected in Northern California, is also near Seattle and Olympia region, but pretty quiet as far as the Cascadia subduction zone goes. We're not seeing that activity like we had seen before, so that's kind of a good thing. Here is the map, USG map of one-day earthquakes, all magnitudes. Of course, this is 0.0 and above. So we're going to see a numerous amount of earthquakes in California, as that's typical, not out of the ordinary. And for the most part, look at the rest of the nation there. Look at the rest of the United States. Pretty darn quiet out there for one day. So as far as the USGS goes, they're not reporting any earthquakes today here in the United States, aside from the California West Coast region, which is rather interesting to me. Maybe a small little speck of an earthquake right there in Idaho, but pretty mellow. Looking at the live seismographs here, pretty quiet as well on this Saturday night. Like I say, things can change in the blink of an eye. You just never know. That's why I always like to say, please have an earthquake plan. And as always, like me, I like to keep stock of water. Heck, even top ramen noodles. I know a lot of people are like, top ramen noodles? How are you going to live on top ramen? Well, you know what? They're actually pretty good. You mix in a can of chili beans or some tuna, maybe a little bit of mayonnaise or sour cream, whatever you like, and it actually makes a pretty good dinner, and you can serve quite a few people there if need be when the time comes. If you ever find yourself in a catastrophe, if I can spit the word out. But anyway, guys, I do want to thank the new viewers that are out here and the people coming in. And I was just reading a text message here. And welcoming all the mods, the new mods that are onto the channel. I probably will add one more on tonight. And like I say, they're a great benefit and a good asset to the team, to this channel. And definitely very knowledgeable. And I definitely appreciate them on the channel. So for now, I mean, everything's pretty quiet. The solar weather data is absolutely blank. I mean, they're issuing an M-class risk of 15%, which is pretty darn low. There is a sunspot directly facing us right now. It's growing, but I don't think it poses any type of hazard as far as flare activity goes. As you can see up there on the top left corner of the screen there, the sunspots directly in the sun center facing Earth, but pretty quiet, guys. Like I say, it's the sun's been awfully quiet here the past couple years, so I think it's going to continue that way for some time. So we'll just have to see what type of effects that has on the Earth and whatnot. But all right, guys, I will be off here for a little bit, but I'll check back in here on chat, and because I'm not in on the chat room right now, but I will jump in a little bit later. I got to go check on my chicken there. I got some barbecue going outside here in the wind. Kind of making the neighbors a little hungry, probably. Anyway, peace out, guys. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you a little bit later.